Hello, is everyone able to hear me? I think there is a chat box. So if you have any issues hearing me, you could let me know through there. Um, but I'm going to assume that everyone can hear me. And I'd like to say welcome. I'm just going to wait for a few more attendees to join as it's still 8 o'clock. So we'll begin in the next moment or so. All right, hello and welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing well this evening. Again, if anyone has any issue hearing me, please let me know through the chat, or if you can't find the chat, there's also a Q&A. You can just type as a question. I can't hear you, just in case. Anyways, without further ado, we can begin. I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining from across Canada. And I'd like to begin by introducing our guest speaker today, Dr. Ann Gillies. So I will make her a panelist and allow her to share her screen and her camera, and then I will introduce her formally. I just saw that someone said their chat says it's been disabled. So I can probably fix that in the settings. But no, okay. It's not a big deal right now. I think we'll just leave it that if there's anything to be said, we can put it in the Q&A box. Zoom always gives me a hard time. Sorry about that. All right, so I will make Dr. Gillies here a panelist. And I will just give her a brief introduction before she begins her talk. Hello, Dr. Gillies, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So we have our topic for today on how gender ideology creates a prime environment for the grooming of children. And we thought it would be important for parents to hear from an expert such as yourself about the dangers, first of all, of just transgender ideology, radical gender ideology, or gender theory, as it's also called. Not only the dangers that it poses to children who are gender dysphoric or confused about their identity, but also just the danger and the harm of teaching these topics to children who are too young to comprehend them, and how the environment of that kind of education, radical sex ed, in schools especially, can be a prime environment for predators who often enter the school systems or other public spheres in society, extracurriculars and things like that. And it's all just innocently, in the name of progress or, in being inclusive, but oftentimes it's adults who are preying on the most vulnerable among us, so children. So, anyways, I have your biography right here, so I just was going to introduce you, but if you'd prefer to introduce yourself, that works as well, just because uh, I know that uh, you are a trauma specialist, you're an author and a speaker, and you also are the founder, I believe, of Restoring the Mosaic. So if you'd like to share a little bit about those things, that would be great.
Sure. So Restoring the Mosaic's been going for a little while now, but I actually really started uh, in this area, not so much on transgender, but the whole area of LGBTQ and research in that probably 30 years ago. And then more recently, gender dysphoria. So I've written a few books, several on gender and sexuality. So it's kind of been my not not my preferred place to be, but it certainly has been necessary to expose what's going on and to really help parents and educators and politicians understand the dangers that are inherent in this ideology.
And how did you get into the work of being a trauma specialist, just so that people can understand kind of your
Oh,
background?
right. So that really comes out of my personal history, and then kind of went to school later in life and started to um, really study trauma and then attachment, and I loved it, and I loved working with clients and that had severe trauma in their lives because I really like to see um, them begin to open up like flowers, and as I felt God was really moving in their lives and they felt that. And so there was a lot of healing and restoration that you don't get just from psychology alone. So I practiced um, from a psychological perspective, but my foundation was Christian uh, theory and theology. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. And I, I mean, I retired from that so that I could focus on the whole gender ideology, but I do enjoy being with people and helping them. So yeah, that's where that kind of went from and started from.
Thank you so much. I mean, we're so blessed and grateful to have you here sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and your experience with us. And you're one of the more outspoken voices in Canada about the dangers of transgender ideology, especially as it relates to children. So, without any further ado, I will allow you to share your screen and take it from here. And we're really looking forward to your talk.
Awesome. Yes, because we're going to, it says sharing is not turned on.
I will make you a host then, because sometimes it doesn't allow
Yes, I
people to
think that's
make co-host. Okay. So now it should allow you. Sorry about that.
okay.
And I will probably turn off my camera. Um,
Yes, I don't know why I've got so many screens. Um,
I can see your screen now. So
okay, good, good. Okay, so I hope we're going to go through these fairly quickly just because I have a lot to share in a little bit of time, and I want to make sure there's time for Q&A. So first of all, I want to say that gender affirming care is the ultimate deception. And my latest book was called The Ultimate Deception, The Truth of Gender Affirming Care, which is based on, it's a research based, as are most of my works are. And I think people just need to understand there's so much more that needs to be said. This is one of the things that parents are often confronted with. And I've been struggling with a really bad cold and I've lost my voice. So it's coming back, but I can feel the tickle. So I'm very sorry about this. But what do parents do when a doctor says, do you want a live son or a dead daughter? This is the level of manipulation and betrayal, actually, from the medical association and the absolute pressure that's put on parents. So we want to talk about safeguarding of children's medical ethics and parental rights as we go through this today. And then hopefully you'll have your questions and anything that you want to discuss at the end. I am going to be talking also kind of maybe directing some of the conversation toward parents who have a child who seems to be exhibiting, some gender identity issues or struggles, because they need to know that there's people there for them and that can listen to them. It's not so cut and dried. I think things are starting to open up around the world, but not so much in Canada. Anyway, so what is gender dysphoria? First of all, it's a psychological distress. It's a state of the mind. It's not related to biological sex. It's a condition of the mind, which means that the mind controls, it's how we think about ourselves. So it's not a biological disease, and there's no actual diagnosis for it. Historically, it's been very rare, and yet over the last decade, oh, probably 2 decades now, there's been a tremendous increase in the number of adolescents transitioning, which was never heard of before. So, mental health profile of these youth, they have high rates of anxiety and depression, often behavioral disorders, so antisocial and conduct disorders, autism, a lot, at least 30 to 50% of these children are on the autism spectrum. So you have very vulnerable children, and then significant rates of self-harm and distress that keep happening, not just not before, I'm sorry, not just before young people decide to transition, but after it actually gets worse. Uh, as they go along. And that's not what you hear in the news. The typical treatment for a child who all of a sudden declares they're born in the wrong body starts with social transitioning. So they begin to, change the way they look, cut their hair, change the way they dress. Then it goes to puberty blockers. And after that, cross-sex hormones, and then if they want, and often do, surgical interventions. So here we have off-label use of drugs, puberty blockers, which were never meant for children to stop their puberty totally. Puberty blockers were for prepubescent children who went into puberty at the ages of 7 or 8, and they were put on these drugs for a very short time just to stop that from happening. But then, when they were taken off, it would kind of rectify their hormonal system, and then they would go through a normal puberty at the normal times. But these puberty blockers um, create bone density risks, probable neurodevelopment impact. I think there's some studies going on now about cognition and what happens because puberty is a time when the whole brain recalibrates. And so, what happens when that doesn't happen to a child? Well, we're not sure yet, but it's probably not good. Oh, I hope I'm going to get through this night. If they go on puberty blockers, there's a high likelihood that they're going to continue onto hormones, and that's really deadly. There's permanent effects, infertility risks. It's not just a risk, they will be infertile. Cardiovascular concerns, bone health, I talked about, and then lifelong medical intervention and dependency because they have to stay on the drugs their entire life. And there's all kinds of other things that are going on there when these adolescents have these high anxiety, high depression, and then they go on the drugs and then they do surgical interventions. So we're removing healthy body parts and causing permanent sterility. And there's a high rates of complication in the surgeries themselves. It's pretty nasty, actually. And of course, they're irreversible. We need to go back to ethical principles of informed consent. But children, oh, I'm very sorry. I thought I was going to get through this okay tonight. Very sorry.
No worries, Dr. Gilly. If you'd like to take a moment if you need to get something or get water, or it's
I have
fine.
some water, but it's not seeming to work.
I know I just got over a similar thing myself, lost my voice.
Anyways, children, first of all, cannot consent to any of this stuff. They don't have the the clarity of mind for one thing, but they haven't matured enough to understand what they're really doing. And not only that, they're not given the facts. So there needs to be full risk disclosure from doctors. That's not happening. Long-term evidence shows that there are a lot of negative consequences. They're not told about those things. And I talked about lacking mature evaluation capacity. And, um, a child who's 12 or 13 really doesn't care about fertility risks at that age. Lots of children don't even think of having children, a baby at that age. So they're really not so interested in that. But when they're 20 years old and they find out they can't have children, that's a whole different story. So the UK National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, which is called NICE, um, did an evidence review and says this: any potential benefits of gender affirming hormones must be weighed against the largely unknown long-term safety profile of treatments in children and adolescents with gender dysphoria. And there is no long-term evidence that the treatments work. In fact, there's evidence to um, the fact that they do not work and they actually increase the dysphoria. We need to have psychotherapy instead of child mutilation. A psychotherapy, behavioral therapy, the traditional kinds of therapeutic interventions that were used with gender dysphoric individuals and children, particularly, included family therapy. Um, and it was the first line of defense and the first line of approach for children that they were included with their families so you had an understanding of the family dynamic and you could treat holistically. The majority of these youth, and you see the stats there, historically desisted by adulthood, and irreversible intervention should never be an option for children. Like it should never even be on the table. So there's been some international reassessment across Europe, particularly, and it's happening in the US as well. So Sweden's, I think, was the first actually to restrict transition protocols, and then Finland did, and also prioritized psychotherapy. The UK has restructured its pediatric services after the CAS review came out, and including um, ceasing social transitioning. They really advise against that because one step leads to another, right? So the evidence is under review internationally, but Canada is not taking a hard look at it. In fact, we are still steamrolling down this track. I think I'm going to have to go get a little bit more water. I'm very sorry. I'll be right back.
No worries at all. Please take your time. Just so everyone is aware, I answered a question in the chat box regarding the webinar being recorded. So it will be recorded and it will be emailed to our supporters for those who RSVP'd but were unable to attend or perhaps didn't know about it. And we're also looking to posting them so that people can access them either on our website or YouTube. So if anyone has to leave early or would like to rewatch it to reference some of the information shared, that would be possible. So
Okay, folks, these wonderful wintertime flu bugs. I'm on the end of it, the healing in, which is nice, but it doesn't sound like it. Anyways, so the core question is temporary adult distress or adolescent distress, because here we have that versus permanent body alteration. And we have to take some steps back. And I'm sure as parents, you have all been thinking the same thing and thinking how ludicrous it is to subject children to these kind of practices. But that's not the way the general public feels. Although there's certainly more confusion arising and some very deep concerns, especially after what's been happening in Tumbler Ridge, and then this other man who shot, um, I think his son at a hockey arena, and I mean it's horrible. But there's some reasons behind that. Hmm. Anyways, so we need caution, extreme caution. And we need child protection. And one of the reasons we need child protection is because once they start on these drugs and the depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues surface more and more because they often have multiple underlying mental health issues, you're going to see a new level of rage in these children, and parents of these children see that experience. It is horrid. And I think that's what we're experiencing now with these adult transitioners. So, child grooming is a psychological process. I want to talk about that. Um, and it's used to influence minors towards certain beliefs and behaviors or relationships that violate healthy developmental boundaries. And it really violates the parent-child relationship as well, because grooming wants the child, right? So they want the child. The person wants the child to themselves um, for a particular purpose. So there's a normalization of new beliefs. And cell phones are probably a curse to children, I would say. There's many benefits to cell phones, but for children, um, they just open the door to so many sites that are absolutely horrendous for them to be on. Another attribute or pattern is secrecy from parents. The and the sites that the children end up on, if they're questioning their identity, and they end up at Tumblr or TikTok or um, Reddit, there are sites just literally um, telling children how to transition, and they're encouraged. It's very much grooming. Um, there's an emotional dependency that's created with the individuals that they're corresponding with, and identity reshaping, boundary erosion, and desensitization to inappropriate ideas. And that's very much like porn. We'll talk a little bit about porn. I'm not going to get into that too much, but they're exposed to all kinds of ideas that never crossed their mind before. And most all of it is sexual. And they are being sexualized from the time they're very young because so many parents give cell phones to their children and they're on social media. And even if the child doesn't have a cell phone, their friends do. And it's really hard to control everything that they see and hear. So it's very hard, especially in the public school system. So with identity formation in children, we all seek belonging, let's face it. But when you're an adolescent, early teen, you want to fit in. You just want to fit in. And if you don't fit in, if there's something different about you, then you need to find, there's this desire to find a group where you can fit in. And I grew up as a tomboy. And in those days, yeah, it was called tomboy. And you're kind of like, the girls were kind of like, what's wrong with you? And I like to climb trees and catch snakes and do all kinds of crazy things. I don't even like snakes anymore. But, it was normal. And you were allowed to do that and grow out of it. And probably by the time I was 18 or 19, that was the phase that was not in my life anymore. But we don't allow those kind of normal things anymore for children. We want to control it. The media wants to control it. The government wants to control it. And the education system. Hmm. So they desire approval. And children and teens are highly influenced by peers. You know this yourself. And if you have teens, uh, yes, I'll pray for you. They are so influenced by their friends and by what's going on with the peers. And they're neurologically vulnerable to identity pressure. Young children are so vulnerable. And the media knows it. Social media knows it. The programmers know it, and they direct their stuff right at our vulnerable children. And so when children are encouraged to reject prior identity foundations that they've had since infancy, wow, that's a real red flag. You have to really um, watch what's going on with your children. Identity is being rapidly redefined. And then if the child tries to, challenge what they're being told, what they hear, then those kind of views, especially the views of their parents, especially the views if they're religious views, those are just actually not just discouraged, they are just told, the children are told, you don't listen to your parents, um, which is so, so incredibly detrimental to the child's health. And I don't think there's ever been generations like this before where the parents and parental values have been so undermined by the culture. So it's very difficult if your child starts going down this road. So classic grooming encourages secrets from parents. Um, it creates separate identities. So you have no wonder these children are struggling so much because they're one way at home and a total other way at school. And then this whole idea that there are certain groups or institutions that are more trustworthy than your parents. And let's face it, there are some parents out there who are not trustworthy. But by and large, parents are there for their children. They love their children and they want to be there for them. But a secrecy, when it increases, um, it it's a dependency is formed with the outside influences, and those often are, kind of wrapped around the LGBTQ gay straight alliance in the schools, um, and other certainly social media platforms. There's a lot of psychological confusion with these children. And you can imagine, and I think now we're just seeing that all come to light because we really have created the greatest mental health crisis we've ever seen in Canada and throughout the world because children are being taught at such a young age that they might be something other than they really are. And so that contradiction with their innate understanding of who they are, who they were created by God to be from conception onward, that they are biologically male or female. And so when the children are told by people in authority like teachers that that they're wrong, they're a boy, not a girl, or vice versa, or that they need to explore that more, or they might be a totally different gender. And we've replaced the whole idea of biological sex with this ambiguous gender word. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of family breakdown, and a lot of emotional vulnerability. So we need to keep the transparency with parents and young parents. This is really, really important for you to understand because this groups encourage the secrecy, and many of the groups, either online or in schools or socially, um, want to begin to replace the entire family with this new family. So parents are portrayed as harmful or unsafe. There's an encouragement to reject your family of origin and anything that they stand for or say to you so that you can be involved and stay close in this group. Um, yes, there's a providing ultimate alternative identity communities. So, and this is very much happening, whether we think it or not, that because these children and adolescents are so vulnerable, it's easy for adults or older adolescents to come alongside them and to befriend them, which is a good thing, except if it has nefarious plans, and these groups do. Um, it creates the emotional dependence on new support networks rather than their foundational supports of parents and family origin. So aunts, uncles, grandparents. A family family alienation increases the vulnerability of these individuals and it reduces the protective oversight of parents because they keep shunning their parents out of their lives. Early exposure to sexual content. Now, I'm sure all of you understand this, that um, porn for early children or early years children is just it's something they can't unsee. And because porn has become so incredibly graphic, and it's not like in a magazine anymore like it was, 60 years ago. It's live and in, Technicolor and every kind of sexual alternative imaginable. And these children have access to it almost 24/7. It's really, really tough. But it will increase their anxiety, depression, all of those things because they're not ready. And I mean, who's ready for porn anyways? But these children are not mature to enough to even view that stuff. In fact, if I have to look at something comes up on my screen, it's shocking. And to imagine what a 5-year-old or even a 10-year-old feels like. So we have to have some healthy safeguarding on the whole area of social media and cell phones from sexual content. So we need to put some safeguards in from explicit content, reinforce consent and age limits, which have gone by the wayside, I think, especially because how do you control it anymore with computers and cell phones? And then we need to, this is a big one, we need to protect developmental innocence. There was a time where children had a state of innocence throughout early childhood and up until, you know, um, maybe even just early teens for some children. Wow, we so need that again instead of sexualizing them from the earliest ages onward. Grooming again. So, we've talked about this already, but social media communities, online forums, private messaging. So, who do your children hang out with? As a parent, it's really important to know that. Uh, because if you know your friends, then you kind of have an idea, but you hope that your children's friends will be as warm and loving as yours and that they won't lead them astray. But porn is one of those things that is so easy for young men particularly and young children to get hooked on. And porn tracks in the brain as fast as heroin, so it's very addictive. Um, it just normalizes all kinds of risky behavior. Porn and drugs go together, and it exposes the individual to extreme sexual ideas, which are just literally disgusting. But it accelerates the identity exploration as well, and no parental oversight when it comes to all of the technology, because children can access it from almost anywhere. So to monitor online communities, be aware of private group chats your children might have, any anonymous forums. So this is if your child has a cell phone. I would greatly advise you do not give children cell phones. I mean, I've seen infants in buggies with cell phones in front of them. And I'm thinking, I mean, they're playing little innocent games, but they're going to want that cell phone with them all the time, and they're going to start exploring. So, yeah, you have to really do a lot of monitoring, which when I was a parent didn't have to happen because there wasn't such a thing as a cell phone. So, if you see rapid identity shifts, that's tied to online groups the child is on. If the child, starts to really exhibit a lot of confusion. And, the groups really encourage secrecy, so the parent isn't likely to know what's going on. So, isolation, which is a bad thing, and I keep thinking of all the teens sitting in basements through COVID and now after. Um, so, you have all of the social media, all of the games, and all of the things they can get into. And then you isolate the child. So you have isolation and online validation, and it creates an emotional dependency on the digital community. So it's something to be aware of, something to understand, and something to watch for. So a little bit to help use monitored accounts. Shared passwords. Don't let your child have their own password. Uh, Privacy settings and conduct digital audits. Now, I have to tell you, folks, I'm not even sure how to do that. I really did come from another generation, and I haven't had to do that. So this is a whole new world of parenting, and it's like stepping on coals. But children mirror adult behavior. So if you are constantly on your cell phone, or if you're constantly on your computer and not available to the child will isolate to those groups via their social media platforms. And so we have to really keep connected to our children. um, yes, establish device-free family times. Take a walk in the woods. Well, maybe not today. It was a nice storm here. But, do things with your children. we have to set aside our own stuff and let the children, not to be center of the family, but to be included in everything that the family's doing. We need to have that attachment security for children again, because that's the strongest protector for them in this whole trans movement. Talked about pornography exposure. Um, Pornography, and we know that gives a really distorted views of what sexual relationships or any kind of relationship is really like. I talked about accelerated sexualization, but also desensitization to risk. And that is very, very much observed in young people who become highly sexualized. And their risk avoidance is nearly, it's not even there because they really are more focused on having their needs met sexually than what could be a consequence to that very behavior. So I'm going to leave this that you can read that, and I'm going to keep going because I will wear my voice out soon, I think. So clear digital boundaries, back to this again, that you have some plans of protection in place. And this can be hard if you have already been allowing your child to have devices in their bedroom. Very hard to get those devices out of there. But if you haven't done that yet, and I hope you haven't, um, no unsupervised devices in the bedroom, no computers in the bedroom, um, even televisions, because there's so much stuff on there. And a bedroom for a child, a place to play, a place to have friends, a playroom, but um, keep the media away. Let the bedroom be a safe space for them. Set on-screen time limits for appropriate ages. Delay smartphones, of course, um, till 18 if possible, but that's not going to happen. Um, Use parental controls and keep family devices in shared spaces. I mean, these are just a little bit uh, of ideas. You've probably heard some of them before. Um, Helping the child to actually activate critical thinking about what they're doing, what they're watching, what is this show trying to sell or promote? What are they doing? What are they asking? And so if you teach your child to think through these things, um, then they'll begin to think critically. And that's really where you want to go with them. Adolescents are neurologically wired for social validation. And so if your child can find a group of friends that have a wholesome set of beliefs and parents who are very connected and there for the child, then that is one road to resilience. And that's what we really want. We want these children to be surrounded with good friends, good family ties, good church communities, anything that will help them stay safe from predators. Um, we talked about some of this before, but here's some red flags. This is red flags actually of any kind of grooming, the sudden withdrawal from the family, increased secrecy, mood swings. So interestingly enough, these children, a lot of them have severe mood swings after online use and become very irritated, very angry. And then there are changes in language or ideology, how they talk, because the talk can be very vulgar, not like what your child has normally been speaking like. And then sleep disruption. That's a huge one because their mind is getting filled up with all of these kind of conflicting thoughts and ideas. So those kind of things kind of call for some calm investigation about the parents. Um, and to gently, it says no, not confrontation, but to gently begin to explore what's going on in that child's life. Open communication. So children who feel safe disclosing are less vulnerable to online manipulation. So remember that if they can disclose to you or a trusted friend, then they aren't quite as vulnerable. But many children don't disclose. And it's like that with any kind of abuse, sexual abuse. And really, what's happening through our social media platforms is the sexual abuse of our children. So they need clear distinctions between adult content and child content. And in our home, if a child can't watch it, we don't watch it anyways. Um, we don't need that kind of stuff. Private versus public information, healthy versus exploitive relationships, all the things you can teach your child from a very early age. Um, Peer influence versus child guidance. So we want them to understand, hey, your friends are going to be, wanting you to do this, this, and this, but, you know, we're going to expect you to do this and this. And all of those guidelines that parents lay out. So we have to keep the family functioning as well as we can and include the children in everything we can. Community and church involvement is good for them. Um, Sports, if your child can be in sports. And one young girl who I saw, she was 17 when I saw her, but she had been transitioning from the age of 12. And then she got involved over that summer. So she just started. She never went on hormones, thank God. And over that summer, she got involved with skateboarding. And it took her focus off of all of the other stuff. She was away from school where so much, so much negative and confusing messages were being given to her sexually. And by the end of the summer, she decided she really wasn't a boy after all, which is quite interesting because so much is just fed into these children's minds. So mentoring relationships and meaningful responsibilities. What's your child gifted at? What do they need to do? Can they help around the house? Can they help, dad, whatever? Just the normal kind of parenting stuff. So watch though for substance use and risk behavior with young children because it often can accompany the ideas of social transitioning and puberty blockers and all the rest. Um, so young people with psychological distress, gender dysphoria, it often correlates with drug and alcohol use, impulsive behavior, and peer-driven risk-taking. Now, one of the things that we find with trans youth is is all of those actually um, that there is a real push toward illicit drugs in this community, um, and that drugs and alcohol numb a lot of that pain that's going through their mind and their emotions. And so it's very easy for them to get hooked very quickly. So you have to look at the underlying reasons for distress if your child is greatly distressed. And I mean, getting to the bottom of those things may require external helps. So if there's, a good pastor or counseling pastor or a therapist that can help that child, that would be great. You have to be careful that they aren't pushing a trans agenda. That's the big thing uh, in Canada, particularly. But um, parents are primary protectors of the children. I mean, mothers and fathers are like, well, mama bears, right? That we want to protect our children. It's built into us. And so if children pull away from us into these other families, then they lose that kind of protection that they desperately need. Also, that parents have a lifelong responsibility for the outcomes of their child's decisions. Now, I'm not saying that they are legally responsible, but you carry the weight of responsibility and the heartbreak for your child when they go down certain paths in life. Uh, Parents need the right to have second opinions when it comes to all things to do with transitioning. Um, and if your medical doctor or teacher or whomever is pushing your child towards something, make sure, I mean, I would get them out of the school really quickly, but some parents aren't able to do that. But they must seek out facts and get good, um, good opinions from the medical professional, and hopefully, um, your medical professional is not, going down the whole drug route. Excuse me. And I think that parents need to refuse irreversible treatments for their minor children. There's no way. What we've seen is that parents have been deluded uh, to go down this route, and so many parents have encouraged their children, and the results are devastating, just devastating. So, quickly to look at some action guides. If your child is looking or displaying some tendencies, some gender distress, and begins to question their sex and begins to show some kinds of signs that we've talked about, they need a full psychological evaluation. These children often have multiple mental health issues to begin with. Um, as I said, on the autism spectrum, Asperger's spectrum, and other mental health issues. They need to be screened for trauma, anxiety, depression as well. And if they are screened, it's the parent's responsibility to ask for that documentation. You want to have the assessment in your hand, not just trust the person that's doing the assessment. And then step two, ask direct questions about long-term data. So, if your doctor is saying, oh, this is what the next step is, then ask them, show me the research that says that this is actually helping my child. Now, they may try and show you some things that are not validated, but there's good research out there that shows that there are long-term consequences, and the gender dysphoria gets worse, not better. So again, I keep repeating myself here. Second opinion, check the facts, read as much research as you can, and try and find out for yourself, not just take everything at face value like we used to do. There was always great respect for the medical association and all those, people that studied so hard many, many years ago that, we wouldn't question. Now we must question because they do not have the child's best interest at heart in many cases. And because medical professionals are simply being told how to think and what to do. And they're not thinking through this very well themselves. Strength and family communication, we talked about that. I want to say this, avoid panic-based decisions. So because parents feel pressured, extremely pressured by their child and by society, even by their other family members. Sometimes I've heard that, you know, if they don't go along with their child's ideology, their delusion, other family members literally bully them into going along with it. They tell them they're a bad parent, your child needs this. It's a culture of delusion. So it's not an easy road. Um, and prioritize well-being over urgency. You know, if this is really something that that is important to this child, it'll still be important when they're 18. And likelihood it won't be. The problem is if the child keeps the same associations, then they're more likely to continue considering transitioning. Document all communications with professionals. Understand your legal rights, and I know PAFE does a very good job at that. Um, parent advocacy networks, and there are many that are coming up, raising up all over the country. And then, stay informed and engaged because your children are worth it. So, final thoughts. Um, your parental authority is foundational to child well-being, and parental authority has been undermined over and over and over again in our political spheres. So we have to fight for it. You have to fight back. Um, children deserve your protection, and you're the one to protect them. Ethical medicine requires evidence and transparency, so push for it. And safeguarding must guide every decision. It's the child's life, their entire life, that is at stake in this conversation. I just have at the end some research. I can't even think references. So there's a few slides there. So I'll just stop sharing if I can find out where my share button went. Um, see it. So let me. Hmm.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gillies.
Are you able to unshare me? I can't find the button.
Yes, I can. I think I can.
Oh, here we go. Maybe that will. Oh, no, it's not doing it. Anyways,
Oh, there we go. I think I did it.
that's
There
great.
we go. Perfect.
I'm very sorry for that, folks. Maybe I should have canceled tonight. I didn't want to, so uh, my my brain is foggy and my throat is whatever.
No worries. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and we really truly appreciate it. I mean, it was something that I think a lot of folks were looking forward to learning about. So we really appreciate your knowledge and experience on this. It was a great talk.
Oh,
We'd like to move to Q&A so that we can have some time to answer a few questions. So we'll just jump right to it. If anyone has any questions, please type them into the Q&A box or the chat box. And I will start with some that are already here. So someone's asking if you could provide some names of parental advocacy groups, I think specifically, especially with regard to, gender issues or medical stuff.
um, I don't have a lot of names of those. I know the Waterloo region has some really good advocacy happening uh, because of their involvement in the Waterloo School Board. But I have been kind of out of that sphere for a while, so I'm not sure though that PAPE doesn't have some of that. Um, I think that you have probably some lists of advocacy groups. Am I right?
Yes, there are some parental rights advocacy groups. I mean, we're probably the largest or most, most, I would say, focused group specifically on parental rights. There are groups that kind of share other goals that are in common with us, but we're specifically parental rights. So it's a large umbrella.
Yeah.
Um, but if people are looking specifically for parental right advocacy groups when it comes to medical issues or, youth gender transition, we can look into that. But of course, please feel free to reach out to us as well with any concerns or with any help or support you may need. We're very happy to direct you towards the right resources or the right people. So that's something that Dr. Gillies, I wanted to ask you is if someone is experiencing some of these issues with their child, where can they go for counseling? Do you have any recommendations?
The one recommendation that I have that I know that they're not going to be kind of led down the the ideology route is probably Tina Smith Counseling in Woodstock. I mean, I know um, they do online counseling as well. So that's Tina Smith Counseling. That's the one I'm familiar with, and I've sent people there before. Um, so that's Woodstock, Ontario.
Thank you. I'm just typing it out here in the chat and answering the question. Um, and
There's I now I hesitate to give this name out online, but I do have someone that is really excellent with adults, um, parents, that runs parents groups online as well. And she was a former lesbian herself, but she's really, really good. So, but if you, I'll leave that with you so that you can get that out, Celine. So I
yep.
just don't want to share it online.
Yes, that's fine. So if any parents would like to reach out for the name of this counselor or therapist, you can send the email to me. I'll type my direct email in the chat, and then I will get it from Dr. Gillies. I actually have a question. I don't see any more. There's one coming up. Okay, there. That's just an
Excuse
answer.
me.
So I have a question, Dr. Gillies. I have two young children. They're very young right now. But in terms of cell phone, I've always kind of thought when you get a job, you can have a phone. That was kind of what I like to, I'm a little bit old school maybe
The
because
girl.
I'm young. I'm a young mother, but I remember wanting a phone when I was 13 or 14, and my parents didn't let me have one until I think I was 14. So I was pretty young, but I even at 11 or 12, my friends were getting phones, and so
Yes.
but my parents were pretty good at making sure that I was always very open with my parents, and they knew that about me. Now I have two boys right now. I'm sure I'll have more children, but I'm just thinking I don't know what would you consider as a good age, or is it because they're making their own money now, they go out to work, it's a safety thing? What would you recommend? What age?
Yeah, well, your parents were very wise, number one, and obviously trusted you. And I think that's really, really important. Children mature at different ages. And what we see now is that children are maturing later and later and later. They're very, very immature now at 16, 17, 18, in many ways, not all children. So, and yet those are the ones that are usually gravitating toward a cell phone and all of that it offers. So I would never want to see a child before they're 14 having a cell phone, really. Um, it's not safe. I know that when I say that, I know parents who do um, get cell phones for their children or one child in the family. They're all at the same school, and so but they can only use it for phoning. So, because, hey, I'm late, Mom, I'm not going to be home on time, or Mom, can you come pick me up? Dad, I need you, whatever. That's okay. So there are some things you can do. So flip phone might be the best, right? An old flip phone. Um, and
Yeah,
then,
and they
yeah, just to be able to really monitor, but yeah, not before 14. And I would prefer later, but yeah.
I would agree. And I know they sell phones now that are like they're made by tech companies or parents that specifically wanted to create a phone that could just be used for, I think, call and text. Um, and also old flip phones, those work too. But they create them now that so if people can say, "Oh, give your child a phone," and what if they need to call you and no one uses landlines anymore? that you can kind of bypass that excuse and say, well, here's a phone and it's just for calling. But I think when children get to an age of 15, 16, and they're working, it's my personal opinion would be also it's good to kind of coach them and mentor them into like, this is a phone and you have some more freedom now, but also you're still young and we'll guide you. So it kind of allowing them to have they're going to have now a phone where they can use the internet or maybe have a Facebook or an Instagram or what as they get older. I don't like social media before 16 personally, but I'm just saying that I think with the right parental relationship, you can guide them and mentor them and have an open relationship so that there's no secrets. And I think that's the key.
Well, it is. And the other thing to remember about cell phones, apart from the whole sexual content and all of the things that they can visually see, is the whole addictive
Yeah.
issue. Like they become so addicted and they replace friends and family and conversation. So there's so many reasons to limit their use because they become like a second or third hand maybe. So yeah, the longer you can limit that, the better.
Thank you. Just so everyone knows, I've typed the email mediapafe@gmail.com. So if you'd like the name of the counselor that Dr. Gillies mentioned, I can send that information to you. If we don't have any more questions, we can wrap up. If anyone would like to ask one more thing, I could take one or two more in the chat or the Q&A box. That would be good. I'm such a curious person, so I'll actually ask one more. What you were discussing grooming and children who are involved in online grooming for either from adults or sometimes even just kind of being peer pressured by other children to
Right.
undergo gender transition. What percentage roughly would you estimate of young people under 16 who are undergoing transition, whether it's just a social transition or medical? What percentage would you say is it coming from being groomed, like either from peers or from adults?
Oh, the percentage of those who are transitioning or thinking of
Who
transitioning?
are, yeah, who are or
Yeah,
are
I
thinking
would
about it?
say almost 100% of them are being groomed. I mean, they're being groomed from the earliest ages right in the classroom. And, with the gender unicorn and all of the things, the grooming is constant. And then, of course, from friends and yeah, and to other than taking them right out of the culture, their children are just so susceptible. So I think those children who are already kind of confused and who come with trauma backgrounds or any of those things, social, that have different kind of, struggles with social anxiety, they're particularly vulnerable to this.
Someone's asking, do you know what percentage of people who transition end up regretting it?
I think it's around 30% right now, but I expect that's going to continue increasing because what the research has found is that surgery doesn't make it any better either, because finally, after the surgeries, and long term, like 10 years after the surgery, then um, suicidal rates escalate 19 times higher. Yeah, and there's so much happening because the individual realizes they cannot really be the opposite sex. Something's wrong here. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. There's multiple surgeries, corrective surgeries, so they become very disillusioned. And I think we're going to see more and more. I just received a book yesterday from a young woman. I think her name's Katie. I didn't bring the book in, called Detrans. Maybe, you know what? I'm going to run and get the book and show you it. I just started reading it. So just grab it. Zach.
While we wait for Dr. Gillies, someone's asking, do you think Canadian doctors are aware of what's happening in other countries? Um, in my opinion, sorry, Dr. Gillies, I just hopped to one more question before you show the book. I was going to just address it briefly, but yeah, feel free to chime in. Someone's saying, do you think Canadian doctors are aware of what's happening in other countries? For instance, Sweden, Finland, UK, and many other European countries. I think the Netherlands now and France, they're all putting the brakes on gender transition for minors. I think Canadian doctors are aware. I think it depends on where their ideology is. I would say that I think it's hard to ignore because I see these large medical journals now finally addressing the elephant in the room. So I don't know what you'd say
They
about
are.
that.
They are if they're reading the journals and they're not still succumbing to the Canadian Medical Association's ideas, and the Canadian Psychological Association, which is all about you have to provide gender affirming care. Here's the name of the book. I was wrong. It's called Transformed, and it's by Kyla Gillespie. So I don't have it mirrored. Very sorry. So I just received it yesterday in the mail. She's Canadian, um, female that transitioned. So so that might be a good one. I know there's other books out there from detransitioners, and I know there's more and more arising. If you want to understand the facts of gender affirming care, the lies, I would say, um, my book Ultimate Deception is it's not a very thick book, and it's a fairly easy read. It just has a lot of research references in it, so that would be good. Um, yeah,
What is the name of your book? I'm going to type it in the chat. Somebody's asking.
it's called Ultimate Deception. I'll grab
Ultimate. That's right. Okay.
Ultimate Deception. I'll grab a copy if I have one.
All
Uh,
right. So I've typed that into the chat. And the other one was called Detrans by Katie Gillespie.
you would think I would have one of my own books sitting right there, but they're in the garage. Sorry. It's got a cover, and the cover it has a snake. The cover is quite unique because it is the ultimate deception of the medical associations.
And then we have Detrans by Kate Gillespie, correct?
Kayla,
Oh, Kayla, sorry.
yeah, Kayla,
Kayla.
LA, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I've typed both those names into the chat. We're going to take one more question just because it is now almost 9:15. But we have one here in the chat, and since you're a counselor, Dr. Gillies, I think you'd actually be wonderful at answering this question. Someone's saying my son is 12 and he has a phone, which is meant only for calling or texting, but now I feel he is addicted to TikTok and other online platforms. How do I go back to how it should be? Can I actually take it away? He will absolutely hate me.
Well, you're going to be in for the fight of your life, probably. But um, I think um, I think one of the things that you need to do is really sit down and have a conversation. Remember, this is parenting 101. So if your child's into something that you're concerned about, it's really important that you just sit down and have a good conversation. Not accusatory, but, can you tell me what's happening? And if there's something, if they're, ask them if they're using the phone for social media sites. Um, and number one, why would you suspect that? And do you have controls on that phone to block those sites? I mean, they're not, fail-proof totally, but or they are fail-proof, whichever. But um, I think I think it's important uh, that you follow up and check on that. See, even if they're not thinking of the trans stuff, which of course not all children are thinking that. Some children think I think there's a new wave of adolescents who are actually very, uh, their eyes are open. They think it's ridiculous. And I think we're going to see the next generation. We've kind of lost a generation to this ideology, but there's a new one coming up that's seeing what's happening, and they're like, I don't want to go down that road. But porn and other things are still just as bad or worse. So, um, yeah, sit down and have those conversations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gillies, for your time this evening. Unfortunately, we'd love to continue talking and taking more questions. It's just we are going to end now since the time is now 9:15.
Yeah.
However, if anyone would like to reach out to Dr. Gillies, you can contact me and I can, connect you. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to know the name of the counselor, as I mentioned, please email me at mediapafe@gmail.com. I've put that's the most direct email to contact me directly, and I'm the communications director. So if you'd like to find out anything about this webinar, or if you have any more questions, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help. So thank you so much to everyone for joining tonight. I hope that it was informative. And thank you so much, Dr. Gillies, for giving us your time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.